All right, hello everybody. Welcome to this free live training. I am solo today, so I want to make sure I'm recording this, but I'm also on Facebook Live. If you're watching this right now, you're probably on Facebook Live. But if you're not, then this is the recording. But because I'm solo, I want to make sure that everything's working. So I'm going to get on the Yak0 Concepts page real quick and make sure that. Here we go. Awesome. Sweet. I see myself, which is kind of surreal. I see myself, seeing myself, talking to myself. All right, cool. So I'm just going to have this over here to make sure that if you have any questions, comments, concerns, if you're live with me, give me a hashtag live. And if you're watching it as a replay, hashtag replay. And if you have any questions as we go through this, I'm just going to roll through. I'm not going to look at my phone a whole lot because I've got a lot of information I want to cover. Super, super important information. And so if you do have questions as I'm doing this, just drop them in the comments and I'll look at them at the end and I'll go back and review anything and answer any questions that you may have. Sweet. All right, let's do this. So if you have ever been in a yoga class and looked at somebody else practicing and thought, why can't I do that? Or even worse, tried to force your body into the position that you see that person doing. Or if you've ever been in a yoga class and wondered, how should I be feeling this? Where should I be feeling this? What should I be feeling? And maybe it's more, what does the pose, what should it look like? I am going to be answering all of those questions in this training, so be sure to stay through the entirety because it's going to clear up all of that confusion. Now, this is what's supernatural. And so if you've ever been in a situation where you've in a class and you're looking at somebody else, and of course you look at the one, Gumby person who's doing the pose super flexy bendy style, and you're looking at him, you're like, that is obviously the way it should be done because that looks like it's better than what I'm doing. My point is, it's not your fault for doing that. There's been studies, rafts and rafts of research done that when humans are put in an uncertain situation, i.e. a yoga class that you're a beginner in it, and you're uncertain of what is going on, intuitively, we look to each other for guidance. You look to other people. Now, that's a good thing because we can help each other. How that goes wrong is when you look at that person doing a deeper, a quote unquote, because I'm going to dispel this idea of what deeper actually is. And you're like, oh, that's what I should be doing. And no, the answer is no, that's not what you should be doing. What's happening is that they have a different anatomy than you have. Now, John and I, when we do our teacher trainings, so this I'm kind of doing a little clip from what we teach in our teacher trainings, and this is one of we say if you do a teacher training, if you want to deepen your practice, this doesn't deepen your practice, this revolutionizes your practice because this one key understanding that your body is completely unique from every other person's body in the entire world will set your practice free. You will no longer look at someone and think that's what you should be doing. You'll no longer be in a pose and wonder, why am I feeling it this way? If I go deeper, will I injure myself? That's what this training is designed to do. It's literally designed to give you in your practice, on your mat, this sense of peace, this sense of certainty, this sense, an understanding of what depth actually is without ever risking injury. So that's my hope for this training. And I know this personally. When I went to teacher training, this is back in 2003-04. We practiced it was a 30-day training. We practiced every single day, 2 times a day. We did take Sundays off. And we would do posture clinics in between. And so this was done in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And so every morning we would practice, and routinely our teacher, Jimmy Barkin, would have some of his other students come in and other teachers come in and practice with us. So it just kind of, built more camaraderie. It was really cool. And one morning, and so at this point, this is 2004, I'm 24 years old, right? And so I'm still got that go get 'em. I'm in martial arts, super performance. I hit harder, faster, I'm stronger. I'm a go get 'em performance style athlete, right? And so that's how I was viewing, and I still had that pattern of the way I was, right? That performance style, and I applied it to yoga. So here I am in teacher training, and I see this woman who's, I mean, she's, she had like beautiful gray hair. She's probably, I'm 24 at this point. She's probably like 60. And like, so we started doing poses, and you could tell this, the way she moved was like graceful and elegant. And like, she just embodied this presence of elegance. And her practice was no different. So she was like moving just so fluidly and beautifully. And she had this openness that was like, so here's it is. I'm in a pose called half moon. So you've probably done it before. You go right, you go left, and then you go back. Well, it was the back portion, the back bend, where her spine just seemed like it was like fluid, like there was no limitation to it. And she went back and back and back and back. And I looked at her and I was like, this is what I framed in my mind. I'm 24. She's 60 something. I should be able to do what she's doing. And so as I go back, I start feeling right about here, this pinching, right? I didn't feel it here as like an opening, and I didn't feel it here as like tension, like muscles contracting. I felt it right in my spine as this stuck feeling, this pinching feeling. And in my 24 years of wisdom that I'd accumulated, I was like, oh, go deeper, because that's what she's doing. And I pushed myself deeper, and I felt this sharp shooting pain right in my low back. And I had injured myself in yoga, looking at somebody else who I thought I should be doing the pose better than, totally not understanding what I'm about to tell you and teach you right now. And that is, we are all different. And when I mean we're different, I mean in the way our joints move. And there are 8 major joints. We kind of break it down, and we say, so there's ankles, there's knees, there's hips, right? We say the spine is like one joint. Obviously, it's multiple, like there's multiple discs, and there's multiple, but like we just say the spine, the shoulders, the wrists, right? And so every single, and elbows. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Did I go shoulder? 6, 7, 8. There's 8 major joints. So every single one of those has a range of motion. Now, the range of motion is dependent on the joint itself. When there's limitation in the range of motion, it's one of 2 things. This is what's super important. One, it's tension. That means it's soft tissue, it's muscular, it can be stretched out, it can be strengthened, it can be affected by the practice. That's tension. The other is compression. The compression aspect, meaning, and again, we're talking about range of motion in our joints. When there's a limitation, it's either tension, which is soft tissue, or compression, which is skeletal. It's the bones that are limiting the range of motion. We say bone on bone. It's never really the case. There's never like one bone and another bone pressing into each other. It's usually bone, right? Soft tissue in between, and another bone that's pressing into each other. Either way, you can't stretch that out. You can't strengthen that. You can't do anything, barring some weird surgery to get better range of motion, with the joints themselves. And so what I'm saying is, if a range of motion limitation is tension, then yoga can help. I can stretch you out. I'll give you an example of this. I just want to give you the high, like zoomed out view of it. If it's compression, yoga can't help you anymore, right? It doesn't mean you stop practicing. It just means you've reached a range of motion where yoga can no longer deepen and open you up in that range of motion. Why do people injure themselves? Well, with this misunderstanding that I can infinitely open my body forever and always. Wrong. You have bones in the skin, and the bones have joints. And in those joints, there is a locked, fixed range of motion. Now, if you're tighter, and you've never done yoga before, if you've never stretched before in your life, there's a lot of tension to work through, right? And I'll give examples of this, of like specific ranges of motion in specific joints. So I want you to leave here and being like, oh, I get it. And I not only get it, but I know how to start understanding my movement in my body on my mat. And so, like, once I begin, yes, there's lots of stretching to do. There's lots of soft tissue. There's lots of tension to work out of the body. But if you've been practicing for long enough, or you've had an injury that has changed the joint itself, you may be hitting a compressive point. What's so important to understand is once you do that, if you push hard and you're aggressive, like my 24-year-old self in that back bend, and I kept digging deeper, 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 injury is on the horizon, period. So that's the idea behind this whole training, is understanding tension versus compression, that your body is unique. And when you understand that, and you understand now, how do I know the difference, which is what we're gonna get into, between tension and compression, then I can take that information and totally change what I'm doing on my mat, what I can expect of myself on my mat, so that I have a realistic understanding of what I'm really looking to do and how it should be feeling. Cool? Awesome. All right, here we go. I got some notes. Let me make sure I'm on track. Cool. Okay, cool. So here we are. Now, I'm gonna take 3 joints and break them down. Now, in our teacher training, by the way, we have one coming up in 2021. It's hybrid, so whether it's virtual or whether it's in person, you have the ability of doing a teacher training where we go into the finite degrees of this in all 8 major joints. We give tests and practices so you can see it of yourself. So I want to give part of that, but it's obviously limited by time and space. And so anyway, here it is, first one. And this is going to affect most of your poses in your practice. The wrist. We say the wrist, and it's really just how this wrist moves. I'm going to move a little closer so you can see. So there it is, how the wrist moves like this. See, I'm just going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Now, here's the test. There's the radius and the ulna, right? The ulna is this fixed bone here. The radius is the bone here that rotates. So this bone doesn't do the movement. When I do this bone right here, the radius that actually is doing the movement, right? What I'm testing for is how does my forearm, my wrist, move, and when do I hit tension or compression? And when I hit that, what has to happen here to compensate, right? So this is the test, and you can do this with me if you like. Rotate your palm up, right? So here it looks, so palm up. And now with your other hand, all you're gonna do is grab above the elbow, because what I want to keep from happening is any movement this is the humerus bone, the upper arm bone. So I catch here, and when I catch here, what that's gonna do is now isolate the movement of the radius around the ulna. And so this is what it looks like. So I'm gonna go and just start rotating the palm down, right? This is me halfway. I still got it, that's good, no limitation. Once I go another quarter of the way, what I start feeling is pressure in this hand because the radius is pressing into soft tissue, which is pressing into the ulna, and I'm reaching a point of compression. Compression, not tension. I don't have any scar tissue. I never injured this at all. There's no other range of motion limitation. There's no other reason for it. And so when I go here, I start feeling it. Now, I can push and compress a little bit more, but what I want you to notice is if this was the floor and it was flat, notice how my hand would have to be if I only moved the radius and the ulna, if I didn't allow my shoulder to move at all. So what happens now is as I rotate my palm down and I let go of this upper arm, what's happening is it's no longer a movement of the wrist, of the radius and the ulna, the radius itself. It's now a rotation of the humerus bone in so my palm is flat, right? And so you can do this with others. There's slight anomalies with everybody. Like you may, this one, I have maybe a little bit more range of motion than this one. It's actually the opposite. I have more range of motion on this side than I do this side, but they're pretty much the same. For me, if I only rotate with my forearm bones, then this is where I end up, which means I have to use my humerus, my upper arm bone, to complete the rotation for my hands to be grounded. Why does that matter? You may be like, so what? Great, Chris, thanks for breaking that down. It doesn't matter to me. It does, because think about a down dog position. This will be the pose that I keep coming back to. When my hands are grounded, what I was just showing you is I can do most of that movement with my radius around my ulna, with my wrist, essentially. That's the joint I'm looking at. Now, I can't do it all. So if my palms are grounded, My shoulder has to rotate internally to the inside to compensate for what my radius and ulna, my wrist, can't do. Cool? So that's just the beginning of it. Now, here's the one key takeaway. How do you know if it's tension or compression? Like this, super simple. Like there's nothing limiting me other than compression. There's no tension. I can't like massage it or get any more range of motion out of it. The way you know it's tension versus compression is answering one question. Where do you feel it? Let's take to the second joint, the elbow. This is usually the one we start with. I want to start with the wrist to show you how it relates to down dog. So check this out. And this is the easiest to look at. It's the easiest to understand. When I'm straightening my arm, straightening. If I get stuck here and I'm feeling the pull in my bicep here, it's tension. Because, and maybe you tore your bicep or you had some scar tissue or something that you've been working through, or maybe you had never done yoga before and you've done a lot of weightlifting, and so you're just stronger in your biceps and they're so strong that they're limiting the range of motion at the elbow. You'll feel it here, right? You'll feel it in the area that's designed to be stretching, right? If I'm going here, it's obvious that the design of the stretch is to stretch out this part of the arm, the bicep, right? When I get to a point where I can straighten my arm and I'm not feeling it where it's designed to be felt, but I'm actually feeling it on the opposite side and deeper in the joint, that's compression. So here's the rule of thumb. When you no longer feel the stretch in the muscle, but you feel it on the opposite side and deeper in the joint, that's when you're reaching compression. Again, this, I'm telling you, I'm showing you in the wrist and the elbow, and I'll show you in the shoulder in just a second, but this is related to all the movements of the spine, related to the hips, related to the knees, related to the ankles. And that adage, that rule of thumb, applies to all of them. If you're not feeling it in the muscle itself that is doing the action of the movement, but you're feeling it on the opposite side and deeper in the joint, you're reaching compression. Compression isn't bad. We're just saying don't force yourself into a position because you think it should be deeper, because your body's unique. And this is a great case in point. When I get to a point, and if you look at this is why this joint is so cool, because it's so obvious, because you're like, oh, my arm is straight, but like I can't move it. Well, why can't you move it? Where's your limitation? Well, I don't feel it here, I feel it here. Oh, okay, great. Then don't force yourself anymore, because it's the joint. There's a hook at the end and a little notch up here, and that hook just bangs into the notch. That's it. That's all I got. But somehow we misinterpret that that's happening in every joint. And so we see people doing these crazy deep poses, and we miss completely the fact that maybe they just have a deeper range of motion. If you straighten your arm, look, mine is pretty straight. Some people, their arm is here, right? It goes up from here, and they're not feeling it as here, they're feeling it there. And some people, their arm goes down, and they're not feeling it here, they're feeling it in the joint. What's happened is that the bone, this notch and this little groove, it's just differently shaped. And every single joint in your body is differently shaped from every other person's joint in their body. This is why I started with, like, have you ever looked at someone else and wondered why your body can't do that? Well, it's most likely partly tension, partly something that you can work into, and yoga is super helpful with opening up, but at some point it's going to be compression. And this is the value of understanding this type of information, is then you don't make yourself wrong, you don't beat yourself up or think you're giving yourself an unrealistic expectation, right? So that's the elbow joint. Now, think about this for a second. If you look at someone's down dog and they're like, straighten the arms, and you can't straighten your arms and you're not feeling it here, now what if it's just this joint and that notch is, that groove is shallower, and all of a sudden the only reason you can't straighten your arm isn't because you're not trying, isn't because you're not flexible enough, isn't because you have to work harder at it. It's just because that notch is like maybe a little bigger and the groove is a little shallower, and all of a sudden it just hits there. Now think about your down dog. We already talked about the fact that my hands have to go flat. For me, I got to rotate here. Now, it's not the case, but what if it were the case that I couldn't straighten my arm? All of a sudden, my down dog is going to look like this, right? And you may see, that may be your down dog, and you may see somebody else's down dog, hands straight, shoulders externally rotated, palms grounded, and you're like, why can't I do that? And then you try to force yourself into it, and if it's compression and you force, you're gonna get injured. Over time, it's just gonna happen. Cool, so man, so all of a sudden, we just talked about the wrist, we just talked about the elbow, we talked about the core principle, where are you feeling it? That's the question that you ask to understand if it's tension, it's compression. I don't want this to last too long, so I'm kind of speeding through this. So again, if you're watching this and we're going live and you have some questions about something else related, I'll just kind of briefly overview the other ones, but I'm gonna go through the shoulder because then it'll complete why we feel what we feel when we're in a pose like down dog. So, wrist, you got this, right? There's other range of motion, extension, flexion, all that stuff, but this is the primary one that means the most for us in a down dog position. Same thing, the elbow now, straightening. If you did feel it all of a sudden, like here, then just give it time, work through it. You know, it's not gonna feel great when you're stretching it out and working that, but once it's there and you don't feel it anymore, you feel it here, you're in compression. Now, the shoulder, and there's a tensive and a compressive point for every range of motion. So if I look at the shoulder, right, the shoulder has lots of ranges of motion because this is how we navigate and peruse our world and take things in, right? And we have flexion. This is the movement of the shoulder up this way, flexion, right? We have extension going back. We have abduction, abduction going out. Adduction, adduction going in. We have external rotation and we have internal rotation. Those are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 ranges of motion of, it's really the humerus bone, but we should say the shoulder. What I want to focus on is flexion. Why? Because the movement of the arm this way equates to the movement of the shoulders this way. So all of a sudden, this will put the pieces of the puzzle of our down dog together for our upper body. Very same thing applies. If I start to lift my arm up, and it's 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 up, and I'm feeling it here, right? There's the latissimus, there's the serratus anterior, there's part of the pectoralis, and I'm just feeling like I can't get my arm up anymore because I'm feeling this stretch here. And I'm stretching and I'm doing down dog and it feels good, but it's kind of, it doesn't feel great, but like I'm getting it, I'm opening. And all of a sudden I get to a point where I'm like, I don't feel it here anymore. I've opened all of this. You know where I feel it? On the opposite side and deeper in the joint. Now I'm reaching compression. And now I don't want to push as hard. A little compression is okay. Right? You can lean into it. It helps stimulate bone, like deposits of calcium and bone density. Compression is a good thing, but not aggressively stretching to think that you're going to get to a point. Now you're going to injure a joint. So now, and again, there's this range of motion, there's this, there's that, there's all of it. But right now, if I just look at the flexion of the shoulder, there's a point at which, for me, if I go any more back, I don't feel it here. This is true for me. I feel it right here. And it's the head of the humerus bone that's pressing into soft tissue, the tuberosities, and up into this bone called the acromion process. If you follow your hand on the flat part of your shoulder and go out, there's this flat bony process right there. It's the acromion process. It's what the humerus bone, as you're flexing, pushes the soft tissue inside the shoulder joint into that, and I just can't do anymore. Understanding that, oh, okay, I'm in down dog and I feel it here. Okay, good. You feel it here. Okay, good. You feel it through here. Okay, good. That's stretching. That's tension. We're going to help you out with that. Once I get, and it's here, it doesn't mean I stop doing yoga. It just means, stop trying to force yourself deeper. Because if you look at somebody I actually can't do this, but I'll try, whose head is on the mat, look at just what happened. Look at the deep, deep flexion I have in my shoulders. If I look at that person, and I'm like, that's what down dog should look like. And I force myself there. I will injure myself. Now I understand though. Oh, I'm feeling it through here. Oh yeah, that's the design. That's where I should be feeling it. I'm feeling it through here. That's the design and where I should be feeling it. Now I don't feel it there anymore. I feel it now on the other side and deeper in the joint. And now I'm just gonna play there. Some days I may push a little into it, making sure I don't feel pain. Other days I may realize, no, I want to stabilize more and make sure I'm not going as deep as possible. I just want to work strength. So now we have it all together. Why do my palms go flat? What needs to happen? Well, for some of us, I can go palms flat regardless of what's happening in the shoulder. For others, no, for me, this is for me personally, I have to rotate here to get my palm flat, which means there's a limit to how much I'm going to be able to rotate this shoulder externally with my palm grounded, just simply from my anatomy. How much is my arm straightening or bending? Well, that depends. Is my bicep tight? Do I do a lot of bicep curls? Am I stronger there? Have I had an old injury that I'm working through? At a certain point, if you're not feeling it there, but you're feeling it in the elbow, that's when you know, like, hey, this is as straight as my arm can go. Stop beating yourself up. Stop looking at the person who can bend their arm that way, right? And then, as far as shoulder flexion is concerned, now I know if I'm feeling it here, oh, that's tension. I can work through that. Or am I feeling it in the joint itself? Now that's compression. Now I'm going to ease into it. So all of a sudden, you look at your down dog, not because you're trying to model or compare yourself to someone else, but because you understand this is how my body moves. This is my uniqueness expressed in yoga. This is what literally sets you free. This is why I'm like, I don't want to, like in our teacher trainings, our aim isn't to deepen your practice. We want to revolutionize your understanding of your body, which will then revolutionize your practice. That's the point. And this is just literally, I've only gone as 3 joints. There's still 5 other ones with the spine, everything. It's all there. But this helps to articulate the power and the importance of this principle of tension versus compression. So here's the deal. We talked about the wrist, we talked about the elbow, we talked about the shoulder. With the elbow, I don't think I ever finished this statement. We understand too, like, okay, yeah, I can't straighten it. But we miss the point where the same thing's happening in our shoulder, like I just showed you. The same thing is happening in our hips, like I showed you through the shoulders. The shoulders and the hips basically have the same range of motion. I've got flexion, I've got extension, I've got abduction, adduction, external rotation, internal rotation. Tension, compression points in all of those. But what we miss, which is so obvious at the elbow, is that any pose, right? A warrior 2, why am I feeling it where I'm feeling it? Well, it depends on your range of motion in the hip. For a warrior 2, here is abduction, right? At a certain point, the bones, my femur bones, really the neck of the femur is going to start bumping into it's called the acetabulum. It's the joint itself, the socket of the joint. And all of a sudden, I'm not going to be able to go wider. Now, where am I feeling it? If I'm feeling it on the inner thighs, that's the design of the stretch. Got more in you. Go ahead, keep doing yoga. It's going to help you stretch you out. If I don't feel it there anymore and I'll start to feel it on the opposite side and deeper in the joint, there's compression. And I know, oh, this is my edge. I don't care if that person can sit all the way down, legs wide. That's not my body. Looking at someone else's body and their pose and thinking I should be able to do that is like reading someone else's book as if it were your own. That's their book. Let them read their book. You read your own. And that's what this information does for you. So here's a warrior 2, abduction. Here is a little external rotation and then flexion. Now, why are you feeling it the way you do? Because that range of motion for you, you'll have tensive points, tightness here, here, here. Compressive points, if you get too deep, you're going here. Now, I'm not feeling it here, here, and here. I'm feeling it deeper in the joint and on the opposite side. Right? That rule of thumb is the rule of thumb for everything. I just wanted to show you, like in a warrior 2, why we feel the way we do. In lunges, it's the same thing. Why do I feel the way I do? In full splits, why do I feel the way I do? It all goes back to where are you feeling it? And depending on where you're feeling it, it's going to be tension, which means ease, be patient, but ease yourself into it. Keep going. You're going to get there. And if it's compressive, you've arrived. Enjoy it and just play with the boundaries of what that feels like. The key is never feel pain physically. If you feel pain physically in a movement, especially in the joint, it means you're going too deep into a range of motion that is no longer healthy for the joint itself. One of the last things I'll say is why this is so important is because when I was in my 20s, when I first started practicing before I ever went to teacher training, I wanted to get better at yoga for the sake of being better at yoga. I wanted to do these cool gymnastic-y things with press-ups into handstands and super deep back bends and just for performance sake. I'm now 40 years old at the time I'm shooting this. I have 2 kids, I've got a wife, I've got a business to run, and I want to be healthy. I want my life to be vibrant. I want to be able to do the things I love to do, play with my kids and be active in their lives. Surf when the waves are really good. Do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I've been doing that longer than yoga, and I want to keep that in my life because it fires me up. I enjoy it. And the yoga practice is the foundation to support me in all of those endeavors. That's the value of it. That's our bigger why. And as far as our teacher training is concerned, what we teach is the why behind everything. I just taught you the why behind one idea, tension versus compression, which revolutionizes your understanding of how your body should be moving in practice. We dive into all these different areas: meditation, anatomy, class composition, like psychology and spirituality, and we go, like, when you leave it, you're like, oh, that's why we do what we do. It totally changes and revolutionizes not just like the practice on and off the mat, but like how you live your life, how you view yourself, because that's the real purpose of the practice. So I'm gonna put a link in the comments if you're interested in doing our teacher training that's coming up. This is what we do. Again, it's to deepen your practice. It's to revolutionize your practice. That's what we're really doing. And all you have to do is fill out an application. For anyone who watches this, I want to do something special. If you've taken the time to go through this, I think I'm at like 30 minutes now. Did not plan on that, but I get excited. If you watch this and you click that link and you fill out the application, somewhere on that application, say that I watched the live training that Chris did. I don't care where it is. It can be in your name. We need your name, actually. But somewhere say I watched the live training. And if you do that and you get accepted into the training, I'll give you $700 off. We've changed right now the discount, the early bird discount changed from $700 to $300. So it's not even available to anyone anymore. But because you watch this, because you're here, if you watch it to the end and you want to apply, I will give you the prior discount that is no longer available to anyone. Just let us know as you fill out the application. Cool. So now I'm going to check out this and see if there is any questions. Don't think so. Cool. Steve, thanks for watching. Tiny, Saeed, John, Andreas, Mary, appreciate it. Awesome. Cool. Well, I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you all for actually, this is what I'll do right now. Hang tight. See if I can get that in there. Nope, that's not it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to post that link in the comments, and then you'll be able to get there and click it, fill out the application. And again, if you're going to do it, make sure you mention that you watched the live training with Chris, and I'll give you that extra discount. Cool. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Love you guys, and I will see you soon. Peace.